The planning board gives the green light to new FEMA flood maps. Ilya Zhdanov will spend 12 to 15 years in prison after being found guilty of a 2011 Hyannis shooting. Plus, we get a look at sports with Brenna McCubry. These stories and more on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Tuesday, April 29th, 2014. I'm Sarah Mantle. New FEMA flood maps will soon be enacted in the town of Barnstable. The maps were approved by the planning board at its meeting last night. Director of Growth Management Joanne Miller-Buntich was on hand to talk about the new maps and how that will affect residents.
The flood area provisions, or as they're called now, floodplain districts, zoning ordinance are required by the federal government, by FEMA, to be incorporated into local zoning ordinances as a prerequisite for communities in the floodplain districts to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, one of the prerequisites. So when there are new, and those of you may recall a few years ago, we looked at this and began to look at the maps, and they were withdrawn, rescinded for Barnstable County. Now they're come forward again, and to the point where we've been told, just recently affirmed actually the other day by FEMA, that they will need to be adopted by July 16th. I could be a day or two shy of the correct date, but it's somewhere around the middle of July. And then the zoning ordinance has to be updated in concert with that. We don't write the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance comes to us from the State Floodplain Manager's Office. This way, we don't get to change it, we don't get to rearrange it, we don't get to leave it out, we don't get to put things in. If this is how FEMA wants it, and working through the state, this is how we get it. And so this is one of those zoning ordinances, as the board I think recalls, that we really have very little local control over. If we don't choose to adopt it, if we choose to make changes, it could jeopardize the eligibility of property owners in the floodplain districts to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program.
Dan Ojala with Down Cape Engineering also addressed concerns that the new maps will make homeowners' insurance rates soar on Cape Cod.
What I would say to the board is you've heard a lot of press about this, and it is a big deal. These maps, they were initially done in 2008, 2009. There wasn't much of a change. They changed the datum from NGVD 29 to NAVD 88. And then but the maps were almost identical to what's now. Now these new maps, the velocity zones, they fixed in a lot of places. They got a little bit better. Like down in Osterville, there was a V22 that's down to like V16 now. There were some outrageous things that were out there that they fixed up a little bit. But in a lot of areas, Yarmouth, especially the south side of 28, the flood elevation has gone up 2 to almost 3 feet. I know in Harwich, in one place where there's an abatement, it went up 5 feet. So there's big changes to the maps.
In other communities,
mostly, yeah, we're lucky here where we have mostly large, but Long Pond, like a lot of the areas here, the houses are going to be way up now. I can't tell you how many I've run into, even in Barnstable, where the flood insurance is going through the roof because the new elevations are much higher than they were before, a couple of feet.
Ultimately, the planning board voted to recommend the maps be sent to town council for final approval. Ilya Zhdanov is behind bars after being found guilty of a 2011 Hyannis shooting. Barnstable This Morning host Sarah Colvin sat down with Barnstable Deputy Chief Craig Tamish to talk about the case and Zhdanov's sentencing.
So wanted to start off, last week the chief and I talked a little bit about the conviction of Ilya Zhdanov, of course, someone who's been known to the police here in town since, I want to say, 2005. Young man, 25 years old, was sentenced yesterday in Barnstable Superior Court.
In Barnstable Superior Court, he was. As you mentioned, he was convicted about a week ago. Yesterday was a hearing on a statute called the Armed Career Criminal Act, and it is a hearing that they have after someone is convicted of crime if they have prior violent crimes. And after that hearing, the sentencing hearing yesterday, Mr. Zhdanov was sentenced by the Superior Court to 12 to 15 years for armed assault with intent to murder. He also had several sentences concurrent with that, a sentence of 4 to 5 years for possession of a firearm without a license to carry, 5 years to 5 years and a day for possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and then he did get 7 to 7 years and a day concurrent for the armed career criminal. And once he is released, he will be on 20 years probation with GPS monitoring being ordered. So it was quite a significant sentence for Mr. Zhdanov.
Absolutely, and you know, at such a young age, 25, 12 to 15 years, a long time to be away. And I understand he's going to Walpole, correct?
Well, yes, that is completely up to the Department of Corrections, but they are initially sentenced to there, and depending on the severity of the offense, their analysis, their classification of the prisoner, he may be sent somewhere else, but that's initially where he is sentenced.
Indeed, and I'm certain it's relatively satisfying for you and the department to know that that this gentleman at least won't be causing any trouble in town for at least the next 12 to 15 years.
Absolutely, he has some very violent tendencies, and he's a great person to be taken off the street.
Well, certainly good news to the end of that. Craig, wanted to talk about this weekend. Understand there was a prescription drug drop-off event held at the police department. Excuse me. How did that go?
It went very well. As has been previously mentioned, in cooperation with the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, twice a year they have these drug drop-off programs. And this weekend we had approximately 88 pounds of unwanted medications, variety of medications, excuse me, dropped off. And, this is really critical to get these medications out of people's houses so they are not improperly used or stolen, and B, that they're not disposed of improperly. The last thing we want to see is these flushed down the toilet or in some other way get into the water table. So we were very happy with the 88 pounds that we picked up this weekend, and actually we have a medication drop-off box in the lobby that is available 24 hours a day now, 7 days a week. So if anyone does have any unwanted medications, they can come in and drop them off. And in the first week that box was there, we had approximately 20 to 25 pounds of medications dropped off. So, that's a significant amount. That's well over 100 pounds of medications that have been taken out of circulation.
Now let's get a look at sports with Brenna McCubry.
Good afternoon, Barnstable. I'm Brenna McCubry, here to bring you the latest on New England and Red Raiders sports. The Boston Red Sox play tonight at Fenway Park as they host Tampa Bay Rays. John Lackey will have the start on the mound for the 7:10 start. The Boston Bruins are waiting to hear an official date for the second round of their best-of-7 series with the Montreal Canadiens. Sources say the Bees are eager and the most prepared for the next few games. Taking a look at Barnstable High School's sports, tomorrow at 3, varsity sailing is taking the ferry to Martha's Vineyard. Over at Barnstable High School, boys freshman baseball will host Dennis Yarmouth at 4. Also at 4, boys JV and varsity lacrosse will take on New Bedford. The girls' varsity lacrosse team will be away in New Bedford at 4, and JV will begin at 5:30. Boys JV and varsity volleyball will both be taking on Quincy at 4:30 at the BHS Gymnasium. That's all for sports this afternoon. Here on Barnstable Today, I'm Brenna McCubry.
Well, be sure to tune in to our hour-long news program, Barnstable This Morning. The program airs weekdays at 7 a.m. On tomorrow's show, we'll chat with Joanne Miller-Buntich, the Director of Growth Management. We'll also chat with Richard Elrick, the town's energy coordinator, and we'll have all the news and information you need. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Mantle.